This is The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. With your host, Tyson Gifford and William Rower. Episode 108, recorded May 18th, 2017. Welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. I am your host and the editor-in-chief of TV Enthusiast. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my co-host on this show, William Rower.
Hello.
So today we are going to be going over some news. The network upfronts have been going on, so there's been a lot of trailers, a lot of announcements of renewals and cancellations and new pickups. So we're going to go over some of that, talk about some of the trailers that aired. Then we're going to be talking about American Gods, and we're going to end the show by talking about what's coming up in the week ahead. So, let's kick things off with some news. First up, some shows that were renewed. Brooklyn Nine-Nine was renewed by Fox. Good show. Glad it's renewed.
Yes.
I always need more, good comedies in the mix, because dramas kind of are not hard to come by now. So, when I have a comedy I like, I'm like, okay, just keep it around.
Right. Definitely love having good comedies on the air.
Designated Survivor was renewed by ABC. So this is Kiefer Sutherland's new show.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like 24, except it's from the perspective of the president.
Right. It's if they make Jack Bauer president.
I just finished watching what I believe was the season finale. I enjoy Designated Survivor. Glad it's back. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was also renewed by ABC.
Woo-woo.
That's kind of a little bit of a surprise. People were thinking it might
was on the
be
bubble
done.
because
with Inhumans coming on, people thought that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. might be canceled. Kind of the opposite way around. It's gonna come, but it's not gonna come until mid-season. It's probably gonna have a shorter episode run.
Yeah.
But that's fine. That's maybe it should. It'll probably be a bit tighter if it is.
People are speculation this might be the last season for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but they haven't.
Likely, yeah.
Yeah.
I watched the finale, the season finale last week. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this whole season. I think you stopped watching after Ghost Rider.
I did.
You just got behind.
I just got behind.
Which happens.
Now it's the episodes are no longer available, so I gotta wait for Netflix to get it before I can finish the season. But that's fine because
I'll be interested in what you think about the other two, because there's kind of three arcs or something.
I know the second arc I wasn't too interested in, but the third arc with Hydra World, now that sounded interesting.
Yeah.
And people were saying it does get really good. So I'm definitely looking forward to finishing it out. So I can't wait for it to pop up on Netflix so I can finish it and get caught up for the next season, which I guess it's a good thing now that they moved it to mid-season, because by the time this comes out on Netflix, I'll be able to finish out the last season before the new season comes out, and I'll be caught up.
Yes. So, yeah, I definitely, I'll be interested in hearing what you think of it. I really, really, especially like the finale, but then again, I think they've always nailed their finales. I think last season's finale was amazing. They happen to do much better on their finales than they do on the rest of their show, and I think they actually do a pretty good show on the regular, but it's almost like they elevated to a whole different class when it comes to their finale, so I really ended up liking that. Also renewed by ABC is the comedy Blackish, which I watch, which is pretty funny. And The Sun was renewed by AMC, the same channel that The Walking Dead's on and stuff, so not ABC, AMC. That's a Western. I never even got around to it. And Timeless, this is the interesting one. Timeless, we talked about last week being canceled.
NBC canceled.
And then it was renewed.
Yeah, and then they turned around and they renewed it, which very...
days later.
And it's not... It was, days, I think 2 days later, NBC turned around and renewed it, and it was... That's kind of unprecedented, because, these things happened in the past, but they've never happened in such a short turnaround time and by the same network that canceled it.
Yeah, they canceled it at the upfront once and renewed it at the upfronts.
Yeah.
That's at the same event they canceled and renewed it. So that's pretty crazy. Then we have some returning shows coming this season. Arrested Development is returning for its 5th season on Netflix. So, that of course is always just an issue of getting all of the talent signed up so that they can film at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Last time they had to do a lot of trickery because they only basically had one day where they had everybody at the same time. And so like they had to write the entire season around that.
That's why they did that goofy structure, yeah. Well, hopefully
just because that's the only time they could get everybody in. Hopefully this time they don't
have to have that structure.
I'm hoping they got a little bit of a better setup for that than they did on the last season. But Arrested Development, I think going forward is just going to be one of those things that like maybe every couple years we'll get a new season, like maybe, but it's not like a yearly thing anymore.
Yeah, it's not like a yearly thing.
Just kind of weird, but interesting. A big return that's happening is Roseanne is returning to ABC with the entire original cast, and that includes they had 2 different actresses that played the oldest daughter.
Yeah, yeah.
And both actresses are coming back.
That's hilarious.
The original actress is coming back in the role of the daughter, and then the actress that replaced her in some of the later seasons is coming back in a different role, like a new role.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So they're bringing back everyone. So John Goodman, Roseanne Barr, everybody. That's going to be kind of cool. And the announcement of this comes almost 20 years after the show ended. So this is another like long gone returning show, like Twin Peaks.
Right. Well, this is continuing this trend of reviving old series and bringing them back for new seasons, like they're doing with Will and Grace as well. So this,
yeah, that's also there.
So we're seeing with this that this continues to be a trend now.
I'm for it as long as it's good. I kind of have no interest in Will and Grace.
So now,
Roseanne, on the other hand, was a really good kind of groundbreaking show. Joss Whedon used to write for Roseanne.
Yeah.
In his early days as a writer. So, I mean, a lot of talented people were involved in that show. The actors, of course, are really talented. John Goodman, of course, is now a big movie actor.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, that's going to be exciting to see. I'm interested in that one.
Now it's time to...
Will and Grace, not so much.
Yeah, Will and Grace, not so... I didn't watch that show when that was out. I'm not watching the remake. I don't care. Now it's time to petition Joss Whedon for a new season of Buffy.
Well, there's the comics.
Yeah, there's the comics.
It's technically called Buffy Season 8 and Buffy Season 9, I think.
Oh, yeah. I had those comic books. So we could just do a live action version of those, and that'll be good, right?
Those went pretty fantastical, so it would be weird to see those filmed.
Yeah, that's true. They did.
So here are the shows that have been canceled at the upfront. So right off the bat, one that I'm sad that's gone, but I kind of feel like maybe it was losing steam, so it might be good that it ended, is Scream Queen.
I mean, I'm not surprised. I don't think it was ever a ratings winner, and also it's one of those things where how long can it go before it becomes stale?
Exactly. I think it was showing signs that in the last season, even though the last season was good, it was showing signs that it was kind of okay, this is about as far as it can take it. And also,
it's Ryan Murphy. He's not known for any of his shows having prolonged quality. His shows always seem to degrade. Look at American Horror Story. It always seems to be a degrading level of quality as the seasons go on. So maybe this is a good
after
thing.
season 3, American Horror Story just went way down.
Yeah.
Hell, just a huge slide. So yeah, it could be kind of a good thing that it's just not going to be overplayed. But the first season of Scream Queens in particular was amazing.
Yeah,
it was so
amazing.
Funny. The second season was still a really good show, but it was like I said, you could start feeling okay, they're kind of repeating ideas this year, and they're not quite doing things as well as they could have,
Right,
you could feel that it was running out of steam.
Right, you could see the cracks in the second season.
Yep. Also canceled was your favorite show, Powerless.
Oh man, I'm so sad. I don't know what I'm going to do now. I guess I'm going to throw out my TV.
Powerless seems like a show that was like heavily tampered with by the network.
Yeah, it seems
like they made some big changes kind of from what it was originally supposed to be. And in doing so, I think they really hurt it. But there's good actors in Powerless.
That's the sad
That's the
thing.
one thing I'm kind of sad
good
about.
Good actors in there, but everything else was so crummy. Even in its original incarnation, it wasn't very good. I saw the original pilot before they retooled the show. Well, I didn't say I saw the original pilot trailer before they retooled the show completely, and it was still not good. It was, and then when they retooled it, it was still not good. It was like, okay, this is just not gonna work. Like,
it's kind of sad that of the two, because they had Marvel's Damage Control was in development around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Of the two, the one we got was Powerless.
Yeah.
And that one just kind of...
Yeah, it's a shame.
Was not great. Because Damage Control, I think, would have been actually really interesting. But, hey, I think we might have enough comic book shows on TV right now, or coming up. Also canceled was American Crime by ABC. Not to be confused with American Crime Story, which is on FX. Or Shots Fired, another anthology show with similar subject matter on Fox. American Crime got a lot of good critical attention, a lot of good buzz, but it just wasn't able to sustain ratings. There were too many copycats, and, it just kind of fell apart from there. So, not necessarily going to miss it too much. I did think it was I just watched the first season. I thought it was okay, but I don't think I'm really going to miss it that much. So, also canceled Dr. Ken.
Oh no. My life is over. Dr. Ken.
I feel bad for Ken Jeong.
I feel bad for Ken Jeong, but that was totally lame show. It was like, I know the dude's a funny dude, but that was not coming off in that show. Like, I don't see how like a guy like Ken Jeong could manage to make something so utterly mediocre and unfunny.
Yeah.
It was just baffling to me.
He was trying to reach like a mainstream audience, and in doing so he lost kind of everything that made him kind of unique and funny.
Right, exactly. It's a blessing that this is canceled. I hope he does something more worthy of his talents next, Yeah. I hope he goes for more edgy humor than this sort of like this really family friendly. I mean, and it's not like, because on the same channel
it was practically a TGIF show.
On the same channel you have you Fresh Off the Boat, and that's leagues better than Dr. Ken. Like,
yeah, definitely.
It's a much better show, so I don't know. It's just glad it's gone. It was a waste of a talented comedian, and now he can put his talents to use for something better.
Also canceled The Real Neils, which actually looked pretty good, but I never watched it.
I never watched it either.
It kind of was the round out of, they had the ABC that they had the kind of like different race family comedies with Blackish and Fresh Off the Boat, and The Real Neils was like their Irish Catholic version of that,
Oh, okay.
And it was going to deal with kind of religious oppression with like they're very Irish Catholic family, but one of the sons turns out to be gay, and he tells his family he's gay, so you have that kind of aspect of it. It looked like it was going to be kind of funny. I just didn't have the time to watch it. Imaginary Mary, which looked abysmal, was canceled.
That was a quick cancellation. That just came out.
Yeah, that was very quickly canceled. I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on that, but it did not look good at all. But the big cancellation, the one that was stirring up controversy, was Last Man Standing, which is a comedy on ABC starring Tim Allen. Ugh. And it's stirred up controversy because basically he was alluding to it being a politically motivated cancellation. He's very Republican. He's made some very like off comments about like the Hollywood industry and stuff. He said something about how like being in Hollywood when you're a Republican is like being in like 1930s Germany. Basically saying that he's like oppressed,
Right. Which is like the most ridiculous thing in the world, but
Yeah, so he's been kind of like outspoken on all that stuff. The show's had kind of like a decent audience base for a long time because it appeals to, you know, people like Tim Allen. But, so people thought that this was like a politically motivated thing from ABC, but ABC's response to this is that they were adjusting their lineup. This was a show that was on Fridays, I believe, and they changed their Friday lineup to dramas from comedies. And that's ABC's reasoning, that they got rid of all of their, cause it was also a multi-camera comedy, like taped in front of an audience. And they're also moving away from that. Like, they don't have any more shows like that. I don't know, you know, like it could, maybe it is politically motivated, but, I can't say that I'm offended that it's gone at all.
No, it's a nurse show. I didn't watch it all, so it's not like I'm gonna miss it. Oh no, not Tim Allen.
It looks pretty bad. I have no love for Tim Allen, so I do not care that it's gone. Some other news we have, we talked last week about Once Upon a Time's next season, and that Jennifer Morrison had pulled out from it, even though she was like the main character and was going to be like kind of the main central character of this soft reboot they had.
Yeah, apparently they're doing a reboot. Apparently what's going on is they're only going to have 3 holdovers from the series. That's going to be Hook, Regina, and Mr. Gold. And then they introduced 2 new characters in the finale who are going to continue on into next season. And then that's it. That's your core cast. And from there, they're going to build out the rest of the cast with new fairy tales and other characters from literature that they haven't touched upon in the series yet.
What haven't they touched
I know. I don't know. Moana.
So,
Zootopia.
departing from the series now is Jennifer Goodwin, who plays Snow, Josh Dallas, who plays Prince Charming, Emile DeRaven from Lost, who plays Belle.
Now, Emile DeRaven said that she'd love to return, and that wasn't her choice. They just didn't ask her to come back.
Oh, okay, but she's not contracted.
Yeah, she's not contracted, but she said she was ready to return for season 7, but she said nobody asked her to come back, and so that's why she's not coming back.
And Jared S. Gilmore, who plays Henry, Emma's son.
Because spoilers,
he's not coming back either.
Spoilers. The season finale, they introduced old Henry, and so now they don't need young Henry because they have old adult Henry, and he has his own daughter, and he's gonna be a major character in season 7. So we're gonna have adult Henry for season 7. So we no longer need child Henry.
I'm glad I stopped watching.
Yeah.
Sounds like a mess. In other news besides that, Supernatural, its next season, they're going to be doing an animated Scooby-Doo episode, which I think is hilarious. I think if I heard that for almost any other show, I'd be like, ugh.
No, this is great.
But Supernatural?
I have to see this.
I could just hear the music that Scooby-Doo like, dude.
I'm so glad the show lived long enough to do this.
Yeah. This is great. This is like exactly the kind of thing that works on Supernatural that wouldn't work on most other shows. So I'm actually really excited to see this. There's a picture you can see of like animated Sam and Dean standing next to Scooby. It's really funny. Netflix is going to be doing a prequel series to Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal movie. Did you ever watch The Dark Crystal when you were a kid?
No, never seen it.
So this is Jim Henson's like fantasy epic puppet movie.
Okay, yeah.
So, you think Jim Henson, you think of, the Muppets, and you think of the work he did with puppeteering then. But he did this like kind of darker,
the one with
like full fantasy.
David Bowie?
No.
Okay.
That was Labyrinth. That was the movie. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The Dark Crystal, it was all puppets. There weren't like real actors in it.
Oh, okay. No real actors at all. Interesting.
Yeah. It was a fantasy series, so they're going to be doing a prequel series to that, which is kind of interesting. interesting. I know people that love The Dark Crystal. Like, I had friends that absolutely adored that movie. So I'm sure they're like yipping with glee right now. But yeah, Netflix, finding new ways to hit people on nostalgia and in all different ways. So go Netflix.
Right.
Jordan Peele from, God, I can't even think of the name of the show now. The MTV, or not the MTV, the Comedy Central show. Key and Peele. Yeah, Jordan Peele from Key and Peele. He recently did the movie Get Out. It was like a horror movie, with kind of like a somewhat comedy edge, but mostly horror. He's teaming up now with Bad Robot and HBO to adapt a novel called Lovecraft Country by Matt Ruff.
From the description, this sounds so good. This sounds so amazing.
Yeah. This is like Deep South civil rights issue stuff with Lovecraftian monsters.
That is going to be amazing coming from Jordan Peele. It's not often
as an HBO series too.
When you read a written synopsis, like how like when you're reading the synopsis comes out for potential pilots, reading it also, like, sometimes it sounds lame, like totally lame, and then you're like, but then you see it and then you see it like actually brought to life, and you're like, oh yeah, the way they did that, and then the other way around, it just sounds lame and it is lame. Like, I rarely read these synopses and think to myself, but this one, like, this is one of the rare ones where I just read the simple synopsis of what the series is and what it's about, and I got excited. Like, this.
Yeah, Deep South 1950s racism meets Lovecraft. That's like an awesome combination.
That is an awesome combination. I can't wait for this to come out. The fact that it's going to be on HBO and produced by Bad Robot 2 tells me that this cannot suck.
Or if it does suck, someone's got some splaining to do.
Somebody's got some real splaining to do. Yeah, exactly.
Next up, TBS has a workplace anthology comedy series that they're going to be doing, with Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter himself, and Owen Wilson. They're going to be starring in this. It's a workplace comedy, but it's an anthology, so each season's like a new story. But this one, at least the first season, I'm not sure if this is going to be like a whole thing, takes place in heaven.
Interesting.
Owen Wilson is portraying God, and Daniel Radcliffe is portraying the angel in charge of answering prayers.
That sounds like it could be funny.
And it's a workplace comedy.
It sounds like it could be funny. We'll have to see how
TBS has been doing a lot of like really high concept comedies. This is another one. They found the right niche. TBS, keep at it. Keep doing the high concept comedy stuff. This is good. It's kind of unlike what other people are doing right now, so keep doing it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think that could be actually really funny. And then here's a big story. Netflix is making a TV series based on The Witcher. So fans of the game might or might not know.
we gotta stress it's based off The Witcher novels, not The Witcher video games.
Yeah, but there is a connection to the games that I'll get to. But so fans of the games might not be aware that the games are actually based on an 8-book saga by a Polish author named Andrzej Sapkowski. I don't know.
I leave that to you.
So that's what the video games were based on. So this is going to be a new project based on that. The show is going to be produced by Sean Daniel and Jason Brown, who are the producers of The Expanse on Sci-Fi.
Oh, interesting.
So this is good hands that this is in. There is a connection to the video game, though. This isn't just like, an example of like they're based on the same source material, because Thomas Baginski, who directed some of the more notable cutscenes from the games, including like the opening cuts, like the big epic opening cutscenes for the games, is going to be directing at least one episode per season of the show.
Oh, that's interesting.
So they're informing the show from the game. They're using the game to inform the show. So if you are a fan of the game and not just books, and you're thinking like, oh, this is going to be very different, different. Might not be that different. It might have a lot of similarities to the games.
It might.
We're gonna have to see how they do that. But the fact that they brought in somebody involved in the games to be involved in the show as well is a good sign.
That's pretty exciting pickup for Netflix. Netflix has been very good about just putting out some quality stuff, and I'm hoping this.
And we've said for a while that they needed a Game of Thrones. Now they have a Game of Thrones.
Now they have a Game of Thrones. Yeah.
So
Speaking
this is
of Game of
exciting.
Thrones, HBO decides it needs a Game of Thrones too.
We talked last week about how there were 4 spin-offs in development. George R. R. Martin just recently clarified it's actually 5 spin-offs in development, but they haven't announced the writer for the 5th project yet. That's why they didn't say anything about that, because they were announcing all the writers for the different projects. So the 5th writer still hasn't been announced because they're going through contracts right now. That's why they can't announce who's working on it. They're trying to nail down the contract on it. But 5 series in development. George R. R. Martin also said...
He also confirmed what they're not doing.
It's not going to be based on any of the existing works or stuff that's already covered. So it's not going to be Robert's Rebellion. It's not going to be Dunk and Egg. This is going to be like all kind of like areas of the universe that he's never going to get to in the books.
Basically, George R. R. Martin said it's not Dunk and Egg because in his mind, Dunk and Egg is not finished, and he doesn't want to do a Dunk and Egg TV series and then have the same thing happen with Game of Thrones, with Dunk and Eggs that happened with Game of Thrones, where the TV series is left finishing up the material before he can finish it. Even though I don't think Dunk and Egg is on some set time frame, it's just a side series that he writes occasionally. But
yeah, it's like novellas too. They're smaller books.
Smaller books, but yeah, he gave that as the reason none of them was going to be Dunk and Egg, and the reason none of them's going to be Robert's Rebellion, according to George R. R. Martin, is because by the time Game of Thrones ends, you will know everything that happened in Robert's Rebellion. So why
everything worth knowing?
Yeah, he said you'll know everything worth knowing. So how would a TV series based on it be exciting at all?
Yeah. So he said there could be things that are prequel, there could be things that are sequel. He said he kind of seemed to be pushing away from the idea of a spin-off as well, saying that he would see it more as like continuations or preceding stories.
Right.
Which makes it sound like it's going to be bigger than like some kind of like a cheaper side project kind of thing.
Stories that take place in that universe. It's going to be a whole Westeros cinematic universe.
WCU.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's interesting. I mean, this is the core of this story we already talked about. We already talked about when it was supposed to be 4 spin-offs. They could be picked up. Like, it could be that none of them.
Now, you know what?
I mean, I doubt that's going to happen.
You know what George R. R. Martin didn't rule out? He didn't rule out the fall of Valyria.
Yeah, because they didn't really cover that too terribly much. They didn't cover that too much.
There's not a lot of detail to that story, except, Aegon's conquest. We kind of know how that battle goes. But the whole stuff with Valyria, that was sort of kind of vague and like compacted, and we don't really know what exactly led to the fall of Valyria, since that's like a huge mystery in the Game of Thrones universe. Like nobody really knows why that happened. And so that could potentially be one of these series that would be really interesting and fascinating to explore. I would love to see them explore that.
We also, the only side of the fall of Valyria that we know about is the Targaryen side.
Right.
And the Targaryens escaped before it happened.
Right.
So, like, the event never occurred for them. Like, they were already out of there.
Yeah, they were already out of there,
like,
too.
Way before. There was, like, one of the Targaryen kids had, like, a premonition, and they all moved over to Westeros.
They all moved over. The Targaryens were the only Valerians to survive the fall of Valyria.
So, it'll be interesting to see kind of, like, what happens there. It could be the origin of things like grayscale, because that's supposed to be heavily involved in Valyria, the people that suffer from it. So that'll be interesting to see. I think Asai would be another one. Yeah. Asai is the place that Melisandre is from.
Oh, yep.
That's like never been explored except in real vague comments. Like the only thing that's ever been said about that is like, it's a dark place where, magic is explored and stuff like that. So it's a more magical area than like most of the rest of the world. It's kind of dark. There's like dark sorcery and stuff going on.
It's interesting because it is supposed to be said that magic left Westeros with the fall of Valeria. That the end of Valeria was the end of magic. But how true that is, we don't know. That's the beautiful thing about
Asai is kind of like far away from that though. So it seems like magic was still going on in Asai. There's also a lot of people that speculate that like the dragons actually originally came from Asai and then went to Valeria.
Oh, that could be.
There's a lot of like mysticism around the idea of Asai, and it's very vague. That would be an interesting one to explore, because that's something I don't think George R. R. Martin ever intends to explore.
Maybe not.
He just kind of keeps it vague, so that would be interesting. There's lots of things they could do. I mean, there's things that we might not even think about, because it could be something based on the way things end in the series that could set up stuff to happen in the new series that we would never be able to guess at, because the series hasn't ended yet, so we don't know the repercussions.
Yeah, we don't know the repercussions. So we don't know, but it's exciting. And it's exciting to speculate and think, and hopefully George R. R. Martin doesn't continue to make statements to crush our dreams.
So we're going to talk now about some of the trailers that have come out recently because of the upfronts, and some of them I don't think because Netflix doesn't really do upfronts, but they release some trailers around the same time. We're only going to talk about a few of them. We're not going to talk about all of them.
Oh my god.
Will ended up watching all of them.
I watched all of them for science. No, because I want to give the shows a fair shot. I mean, I did find a couple things that I ended up liking unexpectedly, but I'm going to say everything we're going to discuss here is the stuff worth discussing. And I watched everything to make sure that we didn't leave out anything worth discussing, because if I found something that I thought we should be talking about, I would have brought it up to Tyson and including it. So what we're discussing here is everything that me and Tyson both agree is worth talking about. Everything else is blah.
Yeah.
Unless you want to hear like a horrible rant about young Sheldon, which is literally the worst thing I've ever seen.
Before we get into specific pilots, one thing I wanted to address very quickly is that there is an obvious theme to the shows this year. I remember a few years ago we had like a very depressing upfront where like we just kind of didn't like any of the shows that were showing. And the theme then we said was like, take something supernatural and interesting, pair it up with a hot female detective.
Yes.
Will they, won't they chemistry? That's your show.
You'll be surprised to hear that there's not a lot of those shows this year. In fact, I don't think one show was...
Last season it was...
yeah.
I was going to say, last season it was time travel. And that ended up being a big flop because, basically all the time travel shows except Timeless were canceled.
Well,
but
Timeless was canceled. Timeless was canceled, and then they went back in time and uncanceled it. So look at that.
But all the other kind of time travel shows were all canceled. So that kind of theme obviously didn't work out for networks like last season. This season, the big trend we're seeing, military dramas. Lots. There's like 5, I think. But even CW has a military drama called Valor.
Yeah, this is kind of out of nowhere. I don't know what's driving these military dramas all of a sudden. That kind of...
Yeah, it's just, I think one thing goes around, it starts to gain buzz, people start talking about it, and then all the other networks look for it too.
Right.
There was a year where there were like 4 pirate shows going into development all at the same time.
Pirate shows. Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, this happens. Like, a show starts picking up steam in its early development. The industry's small, so people talk, and then other people start pitching similar ideas, and then you have these competing ideas. It happens, They've had it in the movie industry, not even in TV, where they've had like movies based on the same thing.
Oh yeah, I've seen.
Like
that.
I think they did that just recently with like the Jungle Book.
Yeah.
Where Disney had a Jungle Book thing, and then another person had the rights to the Jungle Book, like the book that the Disney thing was based on, and they were doing a completely different version at the same time.
Warner Brothers is doing a Jungle Book, but they haven't released theirs yet. Disney has released their version, but Warner Brothers
delayed theirs probably because of the Disney.
We're
like, but but this kind of stuff, it happens. So this is the new trend. So if you like military drama, you're in for a treat this season.
And they're all the same show, as far as I could tell. Like, I watched them all, and it was all the same show. I couldn't tell. Like, I can't tell them apart. If you mention one of the names, I'm not even gonna know like which one you're talking about.
The only one I watched the trailer for was Valor, which is the one on the CW.
Okay, I watched the trailer. I watched the one with David Boreanaz, the SEAL Team 6 one.
That one's on CBS, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just stayed away from all the CBS pilots.
CBS was the worst of the bunch this year.
Yeah. CBS just looked toxic from an outside view. Like, I was just looking at everything coming from them, and I was kind of shaking my head the whole time.
It's bad. The only the only good things, like CBS has one comedy which looks like it'll be all right. And then they have Star Trek, and that's it.
But even Star Trek, which is the first show we'll discuss in the trailers, even Star Trek isn't even really CBS. It's CBS All Access.
Right.
It's their streaming service. Like, the first episode, I believe, is going to air on CBS. It was originally intended to. I don't know if it still is.
Hilarious that the best new show of their pilot season is reserved for their streaming service and not their actual network. And the rest of it's just garbage. I guess that's their plan, to get people to sign up for their streaming service, put the good stuff there, and just assault people who view their regular network with just garbage until they relent.
They might just be targeting. What they might be doing is they might be saying, if we have something that's kind of more interesting, that appeals to an audience that's more engaged, more likely to be on the internet and stuff, let's leverage that for our streaming service to try to get that off the ground. And if it's something that, like, you know, is going to appeal to, like, the NCIS, like, grandma bingo club crowd, let's just leave it on CBS proper.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what CBS is becoming even more of than they used to be. They're just becoming more and more of the Grandma's Bingo Club network.
Grandma's Bingo Club network. Oh, yeah, totally.
But let's talk about a CBS show, CBS All Access, because we watched the pilot for Star Trek Discovery. Before talking about the pilot itself, I also want to say that news came out that there was an increase on the order of episodes for the series.
From 13.
And they're going to be doing a companion after show.
How do you feel about that, though? Because we've been talking about the idea of compressing shows down to, and it's clear that this show was envisioned as a 13 episodes. Was the order because CBS wanted more episodes? Was the order because the creators decided that they needed 2 extra episodes to properly finish out the season?
I don't know. I'm curious, and how that works out is very dependent on that reasoning. If it's just because it looks like it's going to be popular and they're happy with what they got, so they just ordered another 2 episodes to fill up more time because they thought they could have that might not turn out well for the show. If it's the writers wanted another 2 episode and the network relented because what they got back they were excited about, that bodes very well for the show.
Right. I guess we won't know until we watch it.
So it all kind of depends. I'm kind of leaning more and more towards shows needing shorter seasons.
Me too.
Because we have so much TV now, and one of the ways you can manage having so much TV is by having shorter seasons.
Hearing this got 2 extra episodes, I'm kind of taking as a negative, because...
Yeah, it most likely will be.
Yeah.
It could be like an almost undistinguishable thing. Like, you know, it could be one of those things where if you watch it and didn't know, you would have no idea.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. We won't know actually until it airs and we watch all the episodes.
Yeah, but Star Trek Discovery, the trailer came out. The real thing that got kind of everybody's attention is they redesigned the Klingons again. I have to say I prefer the Klingon look that we see
I prefer the Next Generation. Klingons. I really wish they didn't have to redesign the Klingon. I'm also not hot on the era. Like this is another prequel, pre-Kirk. They said this time 10.
This is like 10 years before the original series.
And I'm just like, I'm not crazy about that era of Trek. I want to explore what happens in that universe after Voyager. They don't really, it seems like they don't really want to explore that universe any further than that.
Mm-hmm.
The J.J. Abrams show, the J.J. Abrams movie kind of took up where Voyager left off and then used that to split it off into a completely separate timeline where we went back to the TOS, which is like, okay.
There is some interesting stuff going on, though. The lead character of the series is not the captain, where it's almost always been I believe it's always been the captain.
It's always the captain, yeah.
Has been the lead character of the show. This time it's like a lieutenant or something. It's the first officer. What's interesting here, though, is that the first officer is being played by Sasha from The Walking Dead.
I guess you could make like an argument that Riker was supposed to be the main character in The Next Generation, but
that's argued. I think that's just because there was a point in which Patrick Stewart was busy.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of Riker episodes kind of in the middle of The Next Generation.
Right, yeah. I think so too.
So kind of like he became it temporarily. In this case, the first officer, who's played by Sasha from The Walking Dead, is actually has the same last name as a character from the original Star Trek pilot.
Huh.
That they changed. Because, originally the first officer in Star Trek in the original series was going to be a female. And they didn't do that whole, like, Spock, Kirk, dynamic that they ended up doing later. Like, originally it was that they had like a more concrete first officer that kind of fit more into like a typical first officer role, had a different name. It was a female character, and the network fupa'd it. They squashed it. They said, we don't want a female in power on the show because this was the 1960s. So sexism in full swing. They didn't think a female authority figure would be a good idea. So there's almost like a commentary going on with just the fact of this character's name. That now we have this show. It's focusing on the first officer of this of the Discovery, and her character has the same last name as this character that disappeared from the pilot because she was a female in a position of power.
So it also seems like our main character is part Vulcan.
Yeah.
There's a comment towards the end, but she doesn't appear to be, again, unless this is like another redesign, she doesn't appear like the other half Vulcans that appeared in the series. She doesn't have the ears, which they've always retained the Vulcan ears, which she doesn't have. So I don't know if this is like another retcon, another redesign, or what's going on with that.
Well, there is like this weird thing in nature where different breeds, like when you have like a crossbreed between two different types of animals, sometimes depending on which is the maternal side and which is the paternal side, the animals are like completely different species. The ones that the offspring, like ligers, is like, there's ligers and lions, which are crossbreeds between tigers and lions. It's just because a tiger and a lion doesn't get together, that's not a liger. It could be a liger or it could be a lion, depending on what the paternal species is and what the maternal species is. So maybe there's something along those lines that they're playing with, where like Spock kind of became more Vulcan, maybe because, I don't know, like the dominant, his father's Vulcan, his mother's human. So maybe like the father's side took like the dominant genes and became that, whereas like it's the reverse for her. Or it could be that she's less Vulcan. She's not half. She's something less than that, because the Vulcan we do see in the trailer is actually Spock's father.
Right.
And he made a comment about how she wouldn't be able to learn Vulcan because her tongue is too human. So that could imply that she's like maybe a fourth Vulcan, like a little bit less Vulcan than half.
We don't know.
So there's lots of different possibilities that could be there. But that's it's interesting because it precedes Spock, and Spock was the famous half Vulcan,
Yeah, Spock was, exactly.
But yeah, I think it looks okay. There's a little bit of new Trek in the design of the show, that you can see some lens flares,
I mean, well,
it's got a little bit of that new Trek look.
Lens flares have been around forever, so it's like...
No, but that excessive, like that stylized lens flare you get in the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies. So there's some visual cues, like from modern Trek.
Right.
But then like it's part of the Trek Prime storyline, which is, with the original series Next Generation, all those shows
right. It's
are part of like
universe,
the prime time. This is part of that timeline.
Which I was glad. I was glad we weren't going to do anything in the movie universe because I don't care about that timeline beyond, not really beyond the movies. So I'm glad we're not further exploring that in a TV show because...
Yeah, I mean, it looks good. It looks like a upfronts pilot. We don't really know too terribly much of what's going on. The main thing we see is the Klingons looking different. That's kind of like the big thing that stood out to me in the trailer more than anything else.
Ugh.
So, we'll have to see how that turns out. Bryan Fuller was involved in this series and its development. He did write the first couple episodes. He did hire on most of the writers and staff working on it, and they're old Bryan Fuller, like, employees or people that have worked with him on other projects before. So there's a lot of stuff in place that makes me go like, okay, this should be good because of who's involved. But Bryan Fuller also left the project. So we don't kind of know if that's, gonna reflect negatively on the show or show that maybe it was troubled earlier on, or there was speculation about that, and based entirely on the fact that Bryan Fuller left and like no actual inside information beyond that. But yeah, I mean, hey, it's Trek back on TV. It's original timeline Trek. Bryan Fuller was loosely involved. He wrote at least the first 2 episodes unless they changed them. So there's a lot of good there to lean into, to be excited about.
Right, definitely.
The next trailer we're going to talk about is Ghosted. So Ghosted is a paranormal comedy starring Craig Robinson and Adam Scott. So Adam Scott from Parks and Recreation, Craig Robinson from The Office. 2 very funny guys that I happen to like a lot in their different roles, various roles, working together in like a supernatural paranormal comedy. Just the concept had me sold. I watched the trailer, kind of the loose chemistry between the two, everything. It seems really funny.
Yeah, it seems like it has promise. I wasn't blown away by the trailer like I was hoping to be, but I love the 2 leads. Craig Robertson was great in The Office. He's been in several things. He's always great. And then the other guy, Adam Scott, I've only seen him a few times, but he's been good too.
Yeah,
I love the premise. I mean, there's so much they could do with this premise that it has to be at least interesting if it's not good. So I'm definitely gonna give this a whirl. I'm hoping it's funny. I'm hoping it's hilarious. We'll have to wait and see on that one.
Next pilot up is Orville. So Orville is the new Seth MacFarlane show. It's another Star Trek-esque show. It actually kind of looks a little bit like Galaxy Quest, the movie that itself was kind of a spoof of Star Trek. It kind of has a little bit of that vibe to it.
This is Seth MacFarlane's homage to Star Trek.
Yeah.
It seems like I guess it appears Seth MacFarlane is a huge Trekkie. I think he's always wanted to do a Star Trek series, and so now he's doing his own. I just had a perverse thought. I just thought, what if I enjoy this more than Star Trek Discovery? What if this show is better?
It's entirely possible. They're very different, even though the shows are so similar. They're very different tonally. Star Trek Discovery is a legit Star Trek show. Orville is a comedy.
Yeah, Orville is a comedy.
Orville's almost like a spoof of Star Trek. Not quite that far. It's not quite as ridiculous as a spoof.
It's not. It's like I noticed. I noted in the trailer. It seems like Seth MacFarlane has dialed it back considerably, at least for this trailer. Because while there is some classic Seth MacFarlane moments, while there is some classic jokes in there, it seems like it seems more restrained than something like Family Guy, where you're getting like a joke a minute. And it seemed like maybe his reverence for the material is shining through just a bit here. there's a lot of places, lot of places here where they play it straight. The enemies are menacing. They don't look like goofy bad guys. They look like real bad guys.
They look kind of like the Dominion from,
yeah, kind of like
the soldiers from the Dominion from Deep Space Nine.
Right, yeah, they look like soldiers from the Dominion. The special effect, they spent a lot of money on this. The special effects everything looks legit. The ships look legit. The special effects are legit. This looks like Fox spent a lot of money on the show.
Yeah, it definitely has that appearance. Again, this is Seth MacFarlane, so it could go very wrong, or it could go very right. We'll have to see.
It depends on how much you like Seth MacFarlane.
Yeah. But I mean, even among people who like Seth MacFarlane, there's some things he's done that people almost universally despise.
Right, that's true. I'm hoping...
He seems kind of hit or miss amongst his fan base.
I'm legit, I will say, among the pilots, I'm legit looking forward to this. I'm hoping it's good. Please be good. It's so funny because I think it's been so long since we've had Star Trek on television, and now we're getting blessed with 2 shows at the same time. It's like,
yeah, very much so. It's interesting.
Yes.
Next up, we have Black Lightning. So this is, we referred to it before as an Arrowverse show, but they just said that this is not part of the Arrowverse, at least not initially. But Black Lightning is another DC comic series, another one by Greg Berlanti.
Somebody pointed out this guy had superpowers. They spent years fighting this gang, and he couldn't defeat one gang.
Yeah, he has some pretty extreme superpowers too for that.
Yeah, he has some pretty extreme. Yeah, it seems like he should have had this gang cleaned up in like a week. I don't understand this plot point.
Because the gang doesn't really look all that sophisticated.
No, it's not like they had like super guns or anything. At least nobody was wielding anything in the trailer that looked anything sophisticated.
Yeah. This isn't like a gang on Arrow that has members of like the League of Assassins involved and stuff. This is just like a street gang that's like not really high level.
Yeah, not really high level.
That somehow has all this control of this neighborhood despite having a guy with some pretty legit superpowers.
Yeah, unless I'm missing some context here, this seems like goof. Like, now that I think about it, like the show looks good. It's a good premise. The acting was good. And the acting was good in the trailer, but then when you think about it and you're like, wait a minute, these are the bad guys. The whole thing just falls apart. Unless there's like something I'm missing, some context. It's like...
Well, that's the thing is that the trailer looks good. It's interesting. I like the idea that it's like a principal of a school.
I like the idea
that's kind of an interesting approach.
I like the idea that he was
seen.
a principal. I like the idea that he has daughters and that
he quit because of his daughters and has been out of the game for a while.
I like the idea that he's an older person too. You don't get many middle-aged superheroes these days.
You don't get many middle-aged actors on the CW.
Yeah, on the CW. Exactly. You don't get that. I do like the idea that he was a crime fighter and that he was forced to retire and to take care of his family. Like, he made a promise to just take care of his family, and now he's got to get back in action. I like that. That's unique. That's interesting. They need better villains to make that believable, but yeah. I think they need to come up with a better villain. I'm sure they probably have something. They probably have, like, I don't know, some guy who's like invincible is running that gang. It has to be something like that.
I'm kind of almost hoping they don't. I'm kind of hoping that they put the focus more on his life as a principal and stuff, and that the superhero side of it is less dominant than it is on like the Arrowverse shows.
But it doesn't look like it's going to be that way from the trailer. And also it looks like his daughters are going to have superpowers too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's going to be like a lot of superhero stuff.
Hopefully not too much. I just think that if they get the balance right, it could be better. It also seems a little bit like they're aping a little bit off of Luke Cage, just kind of like the social action side of like a superhero story. It seems like I I just feel like if Luke Cage didn't exist and wasn't getting attention for what it was, that this show might not exist.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how fair that is. I don't know how long the show has been in development, how long these ideas have been kicking around. It could have been developed completely independently of Luke Cage, and this could be just one of those coincidences, because it's not like this is a new character. It's not like just like Luke Cage wasn't a new character. It's not like Black Lightning.
No, yeah, definitely.
Character.
But I just mean like making a show that has this focus on social action.
Right.
And the way Luke Cage did it. It feels like they saw that got attention on Luke Cage, and they are like...
It's possible. I mean...
Amping that. Like, even if they didn't make it on that, like I think they amped up that part of the show because of Luke Cage. Like, I feel like there's some aping
It is
going
very
on.
Similar, because you got the gang running things,
mm-hmm.
and then you have the reluctant superhero, who doesn't want to be a superhero, but he's got to spring into action to stop what's going on. It's the exact same beats, when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my concern, that, and also the fact that I just don't have a lot of faith in Greg Berlanti anymore.
No, me neither.
To pull off a good show, so...
I expect this to be, like I said, unique for one season, and then to be exactly the same as every other CW show next season.
Yeah.
Like, to a point where they're, like, recycling plot lines. Like...
Yeah, probably.
Like, somebody you love is gonna be killed by the main villain mid-season. Who's it gonna be? I don't know.
Yeah.
Greg Berlanti, stop reusing storylines.
Next pilot trailer we have up is The Gifted. So we talked about a DC comic book show. This is a Marvel comic book show, or Marvel in cooperation with Fox, because it's based on the X-Men franchise. So The Gifted is kind of like it's kind of classic X-Men in the sense that, minus the school, basically, in the sense that it's mutants being persecuted and then ends up with a family on the run. There's also a little bit of heroes in this, because if you remember in Heroes, you had the main character being like in this group that was hunting down the powered people.
Oh, yeah.
And then his daughter had powers, which is kind of like, that's also happening here, because the family that's kind of running because they have kids with powers, the father of the patriarch of the family is one of the people that tracks down the powered people.
Right.
So you kind of have a little bit of heroes in there, a little bit of just classic X-Men storyline of the persecution of mutant kind. And then you have this as being done by Bryan Singer as producing and directing the pilot, who did the X-Men, X-Men 2, and X-Men, not First Class, but X-Men, Days of Future Past and Apocalypse. So he's heavily involved in the X-Men universe, part of the X-Men universe that I'm kind of not too hot on myself right now. And then you have Matt Nix, who's writing the show and is going to be running it, who did Burn Notice, which is a show that I really did like. And when I watched this trailer, I kept thinking, I wish there was more Matt Nix in this than Bryan Singer.
You do. When I was watching this trailer, I was thinking, this is all very generic stuff. There's nothing terribly exciting in this trailer. Like, there was nothing surprising, at least. It's basically what it is on the face of it. That description that you gave, that's what you get in the trailer, and that's it. So yeah. So I wasn't impressed. Legion, especially after seeing Legion. I mean, that's a gold standard in my opinion. That's
hard for anything else to match up to.
Because
that has a lot of creative leniency because of the state of the main character.
Yeah, because it definitely. But it was like such an original, interesting take using that universe. Especially for superhero shows in general. I was just impressed, and I'm just like, okay, then you get, everybody else has to step their game up. Come on. After that.
Yeah. They should be stepping their game up.
They should be stepping their game up. Yeah, exactly.
They aren't necessarily doing it. But, like The Gifted, going by the trailer alone, I just think like, oh, so it's Heroes.
Yeah, pretty much. I always said
being a fan of Matt Nix and knowing how much of a priority this is to the company and the studio, I kind of have some hope that this is going to pay off and end up being better better than it's looking in this trailer. Matt Nix is the real point that's making me want to watch
You know what
this,
I'm disappointed with this upfronts? We didn't get a trailer for Inhumans. So disappointing.
Probably the worst superhero show, I'm
Probably,
sure, when that comes out.
When that comes out, yeah, definitely. Ooh. Scott Buck, no thank you.
Scott Buck is not exactly, hasn't really endeared himself to comic book fans as of late.
Well, when your credentials are the absolute worst seasons of Dexter, and I mean turning a decent show into pure garbage, just bad stuff, and then Iron Fist, when those are your credits, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily looking forward to that. There is a teaser for that show. It's just kind of narration and the logo.
Yeah, I saw
and some
that.
music.
That's not really.
And that actually is like really cool.
That's not really worth discussing. It was like some dialogue. And, yeah.
I'm like, that makes me think like, damn, this could have been really cool. Too bad it's Scott Buck.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I know.
So the last trailer we're going to talk about is for Glow. So Glow was not part of the upfronts because the upfronts is about advertising. Netflix doesn't offer ads, so there's no advertising.
No, Netflix.
But they release stuff around them.
Yeah, Netflix doesn't operate on the same way networks do. So while networks have the upfronts, Netflix announces stuff all year round. It's kind of what they do.
But they did have a few announcements tied with the time of the upfronts, just because they know that there's a lot of talk about TV at that point.
Oh yeah.
The one that's worth noting, because some of them weren't that great, the one that's worth noting though is Glow, which is Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. It's based on the old wrestling franchise.
Yeah, I remember that actually.
It's based on that old wrestling franchise from the 80s and 90s. This stars Alison Brie from Community and Mad Men. She is an actress who ends up getting involved in this women's wrestling league and ends up just being completely involved in it as a wrestler with it. And it's kind of like her story of getting involved in that. And you get these female wrestlers. I like the talent involved. I love Alison Brie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It looks good.
Funny. It looked funny. The characters looked funny. Alison Brie looked great in it.
I love the opening bit where she's reading.
Yes.
She's reading for a part, and she's like reading this really dramatic line, and then after she finishes, they say, "Oh, you read the man's part."
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And they said, "Okay." So then they repeated the last line of the man's part to like set her up, and then she says, "Would you like some coffee, sir?"
Yeah, that was her line. Yeah.
That was really funny. So this show is also, it's from Genji Kohan, who does Orange is the New Black and did Weeds. I'm looking forward to this. I think of all the trailers, this is the one that
looks like
interesting to me.
I'm adding this to my list.
But it was also the only one with a real trailer. The rest of them had upfront trailers, which are kind of trailers designed for advertising.
Yeah, that's true.
It's different, so.
Netflix doesn't have to worry about
upfront trailers kind of aren't marketed at the same people.
Netflix doesn't have to worry about advertisers. So
yeah, this is like a trailer for audiences that are going to watch it,
right.
Whereas the other trailers are meant for advertising executives to decide which properties they're going to attach their ads to. So that's it for that. Now we're going to be talking about American Gods. We're going to be talking about episode 3 of season 1, Head Full of Snow. In this episode, we got to meet the third Zorya sister. Mm-hmm. We got to meet Anubis. We got to have a real meeting with the Jinn, who we just saw briefly in the last episode. So this episode kicks off. We see an Egyptian woman. She is visited by Anubis, and because she's visited by Anubis, she finds out that she's died.
She's dead. Yeah.
He takes her to like the underworld, weighs her heart against a feather, decides that she's good, offers her to choose a door to enter her afterlife. She lets him choose. She goes on. This is kind of
That
like
whole
I
sequence
watched the thing with Bryan Fuller.
The whole sequence reminded me of Dead Like Me in a lot of ways.
Yeah. There's a scene where there was something after the episode with Bryan Fuller where he talked about how it was important for them to open the episode with that because the way the episode ends, like it kind of acts as like a bookend for this concept of like death, basically.
Oh, okay.
That they wanted to express these two parts. So that's kind of like the reason we opened with this, which was a little bit different than in the last episodes where we established more of a format of showing how a god came to America.
Right. We did.
This is like already in America.
We didn't do that in this episode. But yeah, I say this felt not just because of the subject matter way, but tonally, the way it was done, it was very similar to what Bryan Fuller did with Dead Like Me. Like, very super similar. You could tell this was Bryan Fuller's style right away.
Mm-hmm. It's that lighter Bryan Fuller style, the more whimsical side that you'd see in something.
Yeah, the more whimsical
like
style.
Dead Like Me or Wonder Falls or Pushing Daisies, as opposed to like Hannibal, which is what we're kind of seeing more of for the most part in American Gods. We're mostly seeing like the Hannibal Bryan Fuller.
Yeah.
So this was a little bit more whimsy.
Kind of cool that Bryan Fuller can use this to entertain all sides of himself.
It's actually, I want to talk to my sister after she's watched this episode because she's more of a fan of that whimsy side of Bryan Fuller. And she likes American Gods, but she like, there's a part of her that's like, I just want something like Pushing Daisies again, you know?
Right.
Whereas like this is more like Hannibal again. So I wonder how she's going to react to this being more on that whimsical side. After that scene, we get to see Shadow Moon encounters the third Zorya sister on the roof of a building. Continues to be whimsical. Another very whimsical scene. And she ends up giving him the moon. She takes the moon out of the sky and it's like a silver dollar and hands it to him.
Which offers him protection.
Yeah, she says it's giving him protection and she steals a kiss. Mm-hmm. And then Shadow wakes up and ends up challenging Chernobog to a rematch.
Right.
Basically, he taunts Chernobog saying, "You're old, you haven't done this in a while, you might not kill me with your first hit."
Right, exactly.
So I'm gonna offer you a second hit to avoid embarrassment. To avoid the embarrassment of not nailing me on the first hit. That's what he's betting. Not against him not being killed, but against basically saying, if I win, you come along with Mr. Wednesday and do what, he's asking of you. And then after you're done, you can smash my head with a hammer.
Right.
And so he takes on this rematch and wipes the floor with Chernobog, taunting him the whole time, kind of it's kind of the opposite of the match we saw before, because before we saw Chernobog like singing and it was kind of unnerving Shadow Moon, and then he won kind of very cleanly. In this, it's like the other way around, where Shadow Moon's like taunting Chernobog as he's beating him.
Right, exactly.
And Shadow ends up winning this match, so he still owes his head to Chernobog, but Chernobog owes his service to Mr. Wednesday first. Next, we got a scene where we got another Somewhere in America scene where we see a Middle Eastern man named Salim, and he's new to America and he's waiting in an office. More cool, whimsical Bryan Fuller stuff where you see like a clock spinning behind him. It was a really kind of cool shot as he's kind of like waiting in this office forever with nothing ever happening. After leaving the office and nothing happening, and he's kind of downtrodden, you can see that he's somebody that came to America and is not accomplishing what he's wanted to accomplish here. Mm-hmm. He gets in a taxi cab and he notices that he notices for a second that the driver's wearing sunglasses, and they slip down and he sees that his eyes are fiery.
Right.
And being from the Middle East himself, he relates to a story that somebody in his family had told him about encountering a jinn and the jinn having eyes made of fire. And so he's retelling this story to the the taxi driver, who is the djinn that we saw in the last episode.
Yep.
Just briefly.
Surprise.
So the djinn and this guy, they end up kind of connecting, and they end up hooking up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I'm sure is going to be maybe divisive for some people, because it's a pretty elaborate sex scene that ensues. Bryan Fuller is really enjoying his premium cable allowance.
He's going all out, isn't he? He doesn't, he's taking full advantage of the fact that he is on Stars now and not network TV. Full
so we get this
advantage.
So we have this massive sex scene between these two men. It's kind of ends a bit confusing. It kind of takes like a weird fantasy turn towards the end of the sex scene around the time that they're orgasming.
I was kind of confused at what happened at the end. Like, did they body swap or?
Yeah, it's not really made clear, because what happens
he ends up in the
we see the scene in which the djinn is orgasming, right, and then he wakes up. Salim wakes up.
He's in the djinn's
and the
clothes.
djinn's not there.
Or Salim.
Yeah, the djinn's not there, but the djinn's clothes are on the ground, and that's the only pair of clothes on the ground. So he puts them on. He opens his wallet, and he's got like the ID for the.
Also, the ID is not.
He goes and he takes the
ID
cab.
is not the djinn. It's somebody else on that ID.
Yeah,
if you noticed.
Yeah. So it's almost like the djinn passes from person to person, or maybe the djinn's power passes from, I don't know. Like it's a little confusing.
I think it's a bit ambiguous. I think it might be purposefully ambiguous. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. So moving on in the episode, what I was really interested in was the interplay between Shadow Moon and Mr. Wednesday, which is really the heart of what's going on. And I guess Mr. Wednesday had like some plan about a bank robbery.
Yeah, he said he was going to rob a bank. It was a little different than that. He actually pulled off like a legit scam. This is like a known scam that's been done before, which is where you sit and you get a security uniform, you get a bogus business card. You might have to dress up a car if you have it to look like it's a car from a security company, and you sit outside of a bank. You put up signs saying out of service on the ATMs, and you basically open up a box, and people can drop off their money and sign a sheet that it's going to go to the bank or something. And this basically, people put money in the box, then you walk away with the money. So this is a real scam that's been done. So they're doing that. They're pulling off the scam. Mr. Wednesday's doing it. Shadow Moon is manning a payphone, and the number on Mr. Wednesday's fake business card goes to that payphone, so that if he gets pulled over by police officers, which happens, the police will call, goes to the payphone. He picks up the payphone saying that, security, blah, blah, security company or whatever, and gets Mr. Wednesday off the hook by, making it seem legit. This is part of the scam that's traditionally been done, and it's done here again. But what about before this whole scene where Mr. Wednesday is telling him to imagine snow?
I thought that was interesting because again, it draws off the idea that the power, again, the theme, the power of fate, because Mr. Wednesday just asks him to imagine snow and to basically have faith that if he thought about it, that it would happen, and then it does.
Yeah, it was interesting because Mr. Wednesday got him like a coffee or something, and he's drinking it, and he kind of seems like he's going like almost in and out of like coherency.
Right.
And as he's like imagining the snow and stuff, so it's almost like he's under the influence of something, and then that has him imagining snow in this kind of more deeper, more profound way, and that might be what leads to the snow coming, which I guess is part of the scam, the reason for the equipment to be shut down.
Right.
I don't know. They don't really kind of explain that in more detail.
I guess Mr. Wednesday just needed the snow to provide a distraction, I guess.
He just misses snowy
He just
days.
misses snowy days. It just needs to be snowy. They have a conversation about Jesus that's pretty amusing. There's black Jesus, there's Mexican Jesus, there's white Jesus.
Yeah, I talked about how a lot of people need Jesus, so there's a lot of different Jesuses.
Yep, exactly.
Based on the beliefs of the people. Because, well, the idea comes from that, these aren't entities that have always existed. These are entities born out of faith.
Yeah, these are entities born out of
belief. And as such, if you have like a group of black people that in their religion they believe in black Jesus, then that's the Jesus that they create with their faith.
Right, exactly.
I mean, the actual Jesus would be like a Middle Eastern Jesus,
right.
But white Jesus is going to be the more powerful Jesus because he's the one with the most.
He's the one with the most
attention. Yeah,
attention. And Mr. Wednesday says, refers to him as a dick.
So that's something that maybe we'll see more of coming on as the season develops. Maybe we'll see some different Jesuses.
Maybe we'll see some.
But we also had a scene where we see Mad Sweeney having the worst day ever.
Yes, he's having the worst day ever.
First, he's like, in the bar that he got his ass kicked in, and he's drinking. He wakes up. He's got a shotgun to his head. He's drinking. The bartender says that, to get out, and, is aiming the gun at him, and he says, oh, you can shoot. You're not going to hit me. It doesn't matter, because he's got this, luck. The gun will, freeze. Something will happen. The bartender shoots the bottle. It explodes.
Yeah.
Mad Sweeney's a little shaken by that, and he proceeds to just have one event after another just go horribly wrong for him. The most visually kind of stunning and kind of funny and dark at the same time is when he is getting picked up by a hitchhiker. And I love the whole scene because I love the beginning where he's talking to the hitchhiker or talking to the guy driving, basically like, you're not gonna rape me, are you?
Yeah, you're not gonna. Yeah.
Guy's like, no, I don't do that or something. And then, so he's like, okay, everything seems like it'll be okay. So he gets in the car with him. They're driving off, and no sooner are they driving off than, a rod from a truck goes flying through the window and goes right through the guy's, the driver's head.
I was like, ouch. That's the worst death you could have.
Yeah. So it's just this cloud of unluck that's following Mad Sweeney. He ends up attributing it to the fact that Shadow has his lucky coin, that he accidentally gave Shadow the wrong coin. And we know the last time we saw the coin, he had flipped it onto the grave where his wife was buried, and we saw it slide into the grave.
Yeah.
Into the dirt. So that was his lucky coin. That's his, a magical coin. He goes, he finds Mr. Wednesday, and Shadow Moon is demanding it back, and he's demanding his coin back. At first, Shadow's like, hey, I want it, it's not yours or something. But he's just doesn't even care. He's like, yeah, I don't even care anyways. It's, you want it so bad, go to where my wife's grave is, and tells her where the cemetery is. And Mad Sweeney takes off for the cemetery, and we see him looking at the grave. He sees the newly dug grave. There's no coin there. He digs in there, isn't finding a coin. He finds the casket, opens it up. There's no body inside.
Yep, nothing. Zilch, nada.
Yeah,
no
body, no
either.
coin, nothing.
No coin either.
But there's a hole through the coffin.
Yes.
In the shape of a coin. Like the coin burned through the coffin.
Right.
Then Shadow returns to his motel and finds a surprise waiting for him on his bed. His dead wife, Laura Moon.
Yep, she's alive and she's there, much to Shadow's shock and disbelief. And that's where the episode ends.
And that's the bookend, as I mentioned before, with you have the Egyptian woman dying and weighing her heart against a feather with Anubis, and then you end it with this kind of the opposite of that, which is somebody returning from that.
Right.
That was supposed to kind of bookend this thing. And we know the next episode is gonna, from some scenes shown from it, is gonna deal with her backstory, what happened to her. So
that's gonna be interesting.
That's what we got coming
definitely. Episode. I wish we got more movement on the plot.
Wish we'd seen a new god.
Yeah.
Well, no new gods in this.
No new gods in this. Not necessarily new god.
Well, there were gods we haven't seen. I mean, New Goddess and like media or technical.
I would love to see Mr. World. He hasn't been introduced yet.
Yeah, Crispin Glover. We haven't seen him yet.
I would love to see more Mr. Nancy in like in the modern day in the context of what's going on in the story.
I'd like to see something that connects to Bilquist to the rest of this.
Yeah, there was zero Bilquist in this episode, by the way. So there's a lot of stuff that went unfulfilled in this episode, and for me it felt kind of boring because for most of it I didn't care about. Even like the little bank robbery scam with Mr. Wednesday, I just felt I don't care so much. I wish the plot was moving forward a bit.
I also
more.
felt it was the weakest of the three.
Yeah,
by a considerable margin. I mean, I still like the episode, but it's just the first two were so strong,
right?
And this one
felt like it meandered too much.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's the episode. We're going to be discussing it next week. We're also going to have a new show that we're going to be discussing next week as well, but I'll get to that right as I'm going over what's coming up in the week ahead. So, the day this podcast is up, Friday, May 19th, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt returns on Netflix, and 12 Monkeys debuts on Sci-Fi. It's actually going to be like, almost the whole season in a night. I think they're doing the whole season over the course of like 2 different nights or something.
That's crazy.
They're just airing a bunch of episodes. And it's the final season, I believe, too. So, if you haven't caught up yet and you're interested, the first 3 seasons are on, Netflix. So you can watch through those. Or is it the first 2? I'm not sure if this is the 3rd or 4th. I thought it was the 4th, but I'm second guessing myself. But the previous seasons, all of them are on Netflix right now. And then you could tune in, to Sci-Fi when it comes back on Friday night and binge through the rest of the show in like 2 nights, basically. Then this Sunday, May 21st, 2017, after over 25 years off the air, Twin Peaks.
Yep, finally, the return of Twin Peaks. The long-awaited return of Twin Peaks. Gonna be exciting.
So as Twin Peaks was our first show club, and we did an event for the movie, even though we don't really talk about movies on this podcast. We actually did an episode where we talked about the movie on, like, I believe the 25-year anniversary of Twin Peaks, I think, is when we did it. But yeah, so of course that means that we're going to be watching Twin Peaks.
Definitely.
So next week we're going to be discussing both American Gods and Twin Peaks. Then on Tuesday, May 23rd, Casual comes back to Hulu. And on Friday, May 26th, Bloodline comes to Netflix for its next season. So that's it. That's what's coming up in the week ahead. Until then, you can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will on Twitter. He is at Voxel Hero. And check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, TVEnthusiast.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast client, like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. So, see you next week with American Gods and Twin Peaks. Until then, bye.
Bye.
If you would like to voice your opinion, send an email to theweeklyset@TVEnthusiast.com. TV Enthusiast is a part of the Enthusiast Media Network. Stay tuned to TV Enthusiast and the Weekly Set podcast for more coverage of all of